I was talking to a colleague a couple hours ago. He came into my office, John Curley, and he said, boy, they keep giving you a whole bunch of stories. I'm like, what are you talking about? The legislature. I was like, oh, that's an understatement. There are so many truly awful, dangerous bills that I sometimes don't know where to start. You know what I mean? There's so many bills that are truly awful that will take away rights or make life more expensive for us, less safe for us. I sometimes don't know where to begin. I can only do so many stories on this show about the nonsense in Olympia before I become TVW, and no one wants to become TVW, not even TVW. And I can only write so many stories at KTTH about this stuff before it sort of just all blends together. So I have to pace myself a little bit, but I can always sit back and say, at least you've got the Republicans in Olympia to push back at this and maybe generate some conversation in the media, like on TV or in print. And then I said to myself, especially on the House side, because they've got some really passionate leadership and members, right? Couture, Corey. I mean, we got some really big fighters, Connors. Except they're not going to be able to debate the left anymore. At least the Democrats don't want them to. You know what happened on Friday? Something happened that often happens when you're trying to hide from the media so that you don't get negative coverage. You do things on Friday that are meaningful. You don't really make a big deal about it. In fact, you try to make it sound as boring as humanly possible. And when you tell me we're going to vote on House rules, I'm like, oh my God. I know I'm not supposed to snore anymore because of the Washington Center for Sleep, wonderful sponsor. That puts me to sleep. House rules being discussed and debated? Okay, I'm going to skip that meeting, especially on a Friday. The weather was gorgeous. Well, what they decided to do on the left was get rid of a 132-year-old rule that guaranteed debate on bills, controversial and otherwise. You see, this rule says you need a supermajority to stop debate and just go to a vote. Otherwise, everyone, if they want, can speak to a bill, for it, against it, doesn't matter. They get 3 minutes. They can debate a bill. They can say why they support it. They can say why this is the worst thing in the history of bills. Once those 3 minutes are done, that member is done. Well, Democrats changed that to just the majority, no longer the supermajority. Remind me, Democrats in the House have the majority?
Yes.
Yeah, by a lot.
Yeah, sadly.
Which then guarantees Republicans might not even get to say anything when it comes to some of these bills. And dare I say, the more controversial the bill, the less likely Republicans are going to be allowed to speak. House Majority Leader Joe Fitzgibbon, Republican, I think from White Center, argued in favor of getting rid of this rule.
It is very important that we have robust debates on this floor, and we have, and we will.
I mean, that sounds promising, right? That sounds pretty good. I can hear a Republican saying that. Maybe I'm going to be surprised, even though I know how this clip ends because I was the one who pulled it.
It is important that all sides of an issue be heard. It is important that amendments be thoroughly debated and that final passage be thoroughly debated, and that the pros and cons of any particular proposal be considered by all the members of this chamber.
He sounds so reasonable for a Democrat. Oof. I know when I hit the play button to complete this, he's just going to double down and we're all going to say, Jason, why are you so concerned?
What I don't think is appropriate is for the prerogative to speak on a question, whether that's an amendment or on final passage, to be used as a filibuster.
He just said filibuster, right?
He did.
You sure? Hold on.
To be used as a filibuster.
Okay, I thought he said dustbuster for a second. A filibuster, huh? There is no filibuster in the House in Washington State. Doesn't exist. What's a filibuster?
Basically, a tactic where you debate a bill to delay a vote on it, essentially.
Forever.
Yeah.
You can read a book. You can do whatever it is you want for as long as you want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Remember when I just said they only have 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that a filibuster? No. Now, we always say the caveat in defining any words on this show, or at least leaning on the dictionary definitions, or the general understanding of words, Democrats, they redefine a lot. And so now being able to speak for an entire 3 minutes in a row, that's apparently a filibuster.
To delay a final passage vote or an amendment vote such that the limited time that we have constitutionally allocated to us means that we can't get to a proposal that has majority support on.
Y'all are trying to pass a bill that makes Washington State officially known as the Evergreen State. Can you remind me how you're spending the limited amount of time you have in the state legislature? Could you remind me just once more?
The floor of the House. I fundamentally think that our democracy means that all sides have their voices heard, and that then we move to a vote. And I don't think that we should have endless speeches, particularly
endless or 3 minutes.
Well, maybe he has a short attention span.
Speeches that are restating points that are already made.
Restating points that are already made. So in other words, he's saying, Jim Walsh, who represents Aberdeen, you made this point. Chris Corey, Yakima, you don't get to make the same point or a similar point because I don't want you to. We already heard it from Jim. Why would we need to hear it from Chris Corey? Well, here's why. Every single member in the House represents a constituency. Republicans represent about 3 million or so in this state. When Chris Corey speaks, the Yakima Herald Republic might quote it, right? Seattle Times probably not. He's not in Western Washington as a lawmaker. So he won't get quoted in the Seattle Times, but he will get quoted in his newspaper. Again, maybe Kima TV will go down and give him an interview. Well, when that happens, he gets in front of people. He gets to make a point against a bill. People get to read or listen or watch the argument and then say to themselves, he's actually making a really good point. I never thought about it that way. Well, see, our friend Fitzgibbon over there doesn't want that to happen. He wants one person to make one point, and we all have to, as Republicans, hope that news media picks it up. And dare I say, news media probably not going to pick it up. But if you say it over and over and over again, and you give more opportunities to individuals, even if they're saying the same thing, repetition sells. That's why you see or hear commercials over and over and over again with the same messaging. It's because you have to be exposed to it a number of times before you truly click with it and remember some of the details. They're trying to take that away from Republicans. Additionally, what they're doing is saying, hey, you over there, sorry, you live in Auburn, and Drew Stokesbury, who's your state rep, yeah, he might say something that's going to be similar to what someone else said, so we're just not going to allow you to have your voices be reflected via your state representative on the House floor. So we're just going to move on. And by the way, that's the argument they're giving. They could just say, I'm going to assume that this lawmaker is going to say something similar to what's already been said, so we're just going to move on. How do you know? How do you know what's been said? But let's say you've got 3 people going up. Person number 1 says the same thing that person number 2 says, and so they say, as a result of person number 2, I'm going to assume person number 3 is going to say the same thing. Let's just move on. We're ending debate. Person number 3 is like, wait, I've got something completely different. Well, we've already voted. They're not voting to stop an individual from speaking. They're voting to stop all debate and just move on to a vote. That's called abuse. And this story is not getting any significant media attention. I think the Washington Standard wrote something over the weekend when it happened. We're obviously talking about it. I have no doubt that conservative media will talk about it. You think the Seattle Times is going to jump on this? Probably not. And if they do, it's not going to be in an honest way because they probably agree with Joe Fitzgibbon and the Democrats. They like this.